exactly. They are obviously the inspiration. They are the stories. It really is. It encompasses everything on the farm, and it would be impossible without that chaos of the children.
What really happened between Amanda and Clive Owen, and was there one moment that changed everything? While headlines have portrayed their separation as sudden, their public comments suggest a more complicated story. The couple have spoken about their relationship and family, but many details surrounding their split remain unconfirmed. Importantly, they have publicly described themselves as separated rather than divorced. To understand what went wrong, we need to look back at the life they built together and when things began to change. From Ravensseat to national television, Amanda Owen, often known publicly as the Yorkshire Shepherdess, and Clive Owen built their life together at Ravensseat Farm, a remote hill farm of around 2,000 acres in Swaledale, in the Yorkshire Dales. According to widely reported biographical detail, the two met when Amanda was 21 and Clive was 42, and they married in 2000. Over the following 2 decades, they had 9 children together: Raven, Reuben, Miles, Edith, Violet, Sydney, Annis, Clementine, and Nancy. Clive also has 2 children from an earlier marriage, including a daughter, Rosie, who lived at Ravensseat with her parents before Clive's relationship with Amanda began. Reporting indicates Rosie stopped visiting the farm after that point, though the couple has not gone into detail publicly about that period of Clive's life. Before television brought them wider recognition, Amanda had already begun writing about farm life, publishing a memoir titled The Yorkshire Shepherdess, and building a public profile independent of any broadcast deal. The family's television presence developed gradually, rather than all at once. They appeared in a 2009 episode of the BBC series, Wainwright Walks, then became regular participants in the ITV documentary series, The Dales. Starting in 2011, at a point when the family consisted of Amanda, Clive, and their 5 oldest children. Further television appearances followed over the next several years, including a 2015 episode of New Lives in the Wild UK, the show that made them widely recognized nationally. Our Yorkshire Farm, launched on Channel 5 in 2018. It followed the family's daily life at Ravensseat, lambing, farm labor, homeschooling logistics, and the practical difficulty of raising 9 children in one of the most isolated inhabited parts of the Yorkshire Dales. The program became one of the network's most successful factual titles, and it made Amanda in particular a recognizable public figure well beyond farming or rural lifestyle audiences. Clive appeared alongside her throughout the show's run, generally in a quieter, more reserved role, consistent with his long-standing personality on camera. As the show grew, so did Amanda's individual public profile. She continued publishing books, appeared on other television programs, and became an increasingly familiar voice on rural life, farming, and family life in the countryside. Her identity was gradually expanding beyond Ravensseat and beyond her role as Clive's wife, as audiences began to recognize Amanda in her own right. That growing profile brought new opportunities, but also more attention and commitments. This would later become relevant as Amanda and Clive discussed the pressures and changes affecting their relationship. Before any formal separation was announced, reports began circulating that the marriage was under pressure. According to coverage from the period, it was claimed that Amanda had moved out of the family home for a time, and that the couple were expected to make a decision about their future after the Christmas period. Instead of leaving speculation unaddressed, Amanda and Clive issued a joint statement to OK magazine, confirming that the marriage had, in their words, hit a rocky patch. That statement is worth quoting carefully because it is one of the clearest pieces of first-hand explanation either of them has given for what was happening at the time. They said that with the television show and the books, they had always aimed to show the reality of life on the farm, and that, like any marriage, they had their stresses and strains, compounded by the demands of farming and raising 9 children. They also stressed that they were an ordinary family and had never claimed their marriage was perfect, while noting that media attention had intensified a difficult period. This statement is significant for two reasons. First, it directly names the pressures the couple themselves identified, the ordinary difficulty of marriage and family life, intensified by farm work and a large household, and then further intensified by public attention. Second, it shows that Amanda and Clive were, at that stage, framing the situation as a rocky patch rather than a certain end point, and that they attributed at least part of the strain specifically to media intrusion rather than to any single private incident. It is worth being precise about what is not supported by reliable reporting from this period. There is no confirmed public account describing a specific triggering event, an affair, a financial dispute, or any other single dramatic cause. The couple's own language pointed to accumulated pressure, not a discrete incident, and no credible source has since produced verified evidence contradicting that framing. The June 2022 separation announcement. In June 2022, Amanda announced on social media, in a statement she and Clive had prepared jointly, that they had made the decision to separate after a marriage most reporting describes as either 21 or 22 years, depending on whether the count begins from their wedding date or an earlier point in their relationship. The statement read, in relevant part, that they were sad to confirm and they had made the difficult decision to separate, that this had not been easy, but that they both believed it was the right choice for the future of their family, and that although they were no longer a couple, they would continue to work on the farm and co-parent together, with the well-being of their children as their top priority. This statement is notable for both what it says and what it carefully leaves unsaid. It confirms the separation itself while presenting the decision as mutual, considered, and not the result of a sudden breakdown. Just as importantly, it shows that Amanda and Clive intended to maintain shared responsibility for the farm and, above all, for their children. There is no attempt in the statement to point fingers or assign blame. It also does not identify any specific incident as the cause of the separation, beyond the earlier reference to the relationship going through a rocky patch. There is no mention of a third party, no accusation of misconduct, and no suggestion that one person was solely responsible. In that sense, the statement gives the public confirmation it needs, while still keeping the more private reasons behind the decision firmly within the boundaries of what the couple chose to share. Afterward, Amanda gave a small number of interviews addressing the split, generally in the context of promoting her ongoing television and publishing work, rather than dedicated interviews about the marriage itself. In one such conversation, on ITV's Lorraine's, she was asked whether life had continued as normal for the family and the farm. She responded that it had, describing the situation as reality, and adding that it was genuinely tough and a difficult aspect of the family's life to convey publicly. She noted that presenting their life as a factual program meant showing its full range, including its more difficult periods, and that the family's daily priorities, 9 children, farm animals, ongoing work, had not changed despite the personal upheaval. The separation had a direct and fairly immediate effect on the television side of the family's public life. Channel 5 confirmed that Our Yorkshire Farm, as a series centered on Amanda and Clive together, would not continue. In its place, the network launched Beyond the Yorkshire Farm, Reuben and Clive. A new program focused on Clive and the couple's eldest son, Reuben, following Reuben's first year running a digging business connected to farm work, without Amanda as a presenting participant. Channel 5's factual programming lead at the time, Daniel Pearl, was quoted describing the Owen family as one of the network's most popular subjects, and stated that the network remained committed to the wider family and hoped to announce new projects involving Amanda in the future. This period generated a wave of tabloid coverage, much of which speculated well beyond what either Amanda or Clive had confirmed. It is important to be direct about that distinction here. Reported claims in some outlets about specific personal grievances, alleged behavior by either party, or a single decisive falling out were not confirmed by Amanda or Clive at the time, and this account does not treat them as established fact. What is confirmed is the practical outcome. The show that had made them famous as a couple ended in its original form, and the family's media presence split, for a period, into separate strands. Amanda continued appearing in interviews, discussing farm life and maintaining her writing career, while Clive developed a separate television presence through the spin-off featuring him and Ruben. It reflected how their public lives were gradually moving in different directions, even as their family and farming responsibilities remained connected. In 2023, Clive gave one of the more detailed public accounts either of them has offered regarding his own view of the relationship's end, speaking to ITV's Lorraine. He was direct in taking personal responsibility for at least part of what happened, stating that he had a significant part to play in the marriage ending and that he did not want sympathy from viewers who felt sorry for him, since the family had chosen to film the show, and, in his words, it was what it was. Clive explained that part of Amanda's original motivation for doing the television show had been to provide greater financial security for the family, but that he personally struggled to adapt to the change television brought to their lives. He described handling that adjustment poorly, at one point saying that he had responded to the pressure with drinking and behavior he was not proud of. He also said that at the time, he had felt the show was taking Amanda away from the family, though he later came to understand that what he had perceived as distance was really her being committed to work that mattered to her. This is one of the few instances in which either Amanda or Clive has offered a first-hand explanation that goes beyond the general language of pressures and stresses used in their earlier joint statements. It should be treated as exactly that, Clive's own account of his experience and his own sense of responsibility, not as a complete or independently verified explanation of the marriage's end, and not as any kind of allegation against Amanda. Continuing to live and work together. What makes the Owens' situation unusual compared to many separated couples is that Amanda and Clive have continued to live at Ravenseat Farm and to work together on farm operations since their 2022 announcement. In multiple interviews over the years that followed, both described this as a practical decision shaped by the demands of the farm and their shared responsibility for their children, rather than as any indication that the relationship might resume romantically. By 2024, Amanda and Clive had reunited on screen for a new Channel 4 series, Our Farm Next Door, which followed the family, including their children, restoring a derelict property known as Auntie John's Farm near their existing land. In the opening of that series, both addressed the split directly. Amanda said that although she and Clive remained legally husband and wife, they were, in her words, separate, and described the previous year as incredibly difficult in many respects, while noting that they had gotten through it. Clive, for his part, described the preceding years as strange, noting that although he and Amanda were not together as a couple, they remained in business together and still shared responsibility for their children, calling it an unusual situation that nonetheless represented the most sensible path for everyone involved. Amanda added that the pressures and stresses that led to the split were real, but that practical necessity, namely the shared project of restoring the new farm property, had brought them back into regular collaboration. This reunification for a new show was presented by both of them as pragmatic rather than romantic, and neither has publicly suggested that a reconciliation of the marriage itself was under consideration. Clive later described their ongoing working relationship in blunt terms, saying that for some reason it had worked out reasonably well, and that although they were not a couple, they intended to keep things functioning in a way that suited the whole family. Amanda has echoed a similar sentiment, suggesting that keeping busy with shared responsibilities has been beneficial for the family as a whole. Public updates in the years following the announcement have focused mostly on the ordinary business of running Ravenseat rather than on the state of the relationship itself. When Clive underwent hip replacement surgery, Amanda gave an update on his recovery during an appearance on Lorraine, describing the period as difficult logistically, since the household still had children in school, children studying, and farm work to manage while Clive was recovering. She spoke about him in familiar, unsentimental terms, describing him as a difficult patient, and noted that the family carried on with farm tasks in the meantime, even if not always to his preferred standard. More recently, as the children have grown older, some responsibilities have shifted generationally. Reporting from 2026 indicates that Miles, one of the couple's sons, has taken on sheep shearing duties previously handled by Clive, with Clive stepping back from that particular task as he ages. Miles has spoken publicly about feeling a degree of responsibility as the eldest child currently based at the farm, while noting his own long-term plans remain undecided beyond a general commitment to staying in agriculture. Amanda has continued to describe her post-separation life in terms of independence, balanced with ongoing shared responsibility. In interviews given years after the initial announcement, she has said she remains single, describing herself as getting on with life as an independent woman focused on her children and her sheep. She has also spoken candidly about the day-to-day reality of continuing to share a home and workplace with an ex-husband, describing their dynamic as still involving disagreement and friction at times, while framing that friction as unremarkable given how much time they still spend working alongside each other. In one interview, when asked whether she and Clive got along, she responded that if they did get along easily, there would have been no reason to separate in the first place, adding that Clive remained, in her words, the same person he had always been. Reporting from as recently as 2026, continues to describe the same basic arrangement that emerged shortly after the 2022 announcement. Separate as a couple, cohabiting for practical reasons tied to the farm and their children, and continuing to appear together in television projects centered on Ravenseat and the family's ongoing work. Neither has issued any public statement suggesting the legal status of their marriage has changed beyond the initial separation, and no reliable reporting has confirmed a formal divorce as of the most recent available coverage. Any account of a well-known couple's separation has to reckon with the gap between what tabloids reported at the time and what was actually confirmed by the people involved. In the Owens' case, that gap was considerable. Once reports of strain began circulating in late 2021 and early 2022, a range of outlets ran stories speculating about specific causes, including claims about the couple's living arrangements, suggestions about who had initiated the split, and various theories about what really happened behind the scenes. Almost none of that speculation was ever confirmed by Amanda or Clive directly, and a meaningful amount of it was not addressed by either of them at all, which is different from confirmation by silence. Where the couple did respond, as with the joint Rocky Patch statement to OK Magazine, their own language was notably general, describing ordinary marital stress compounded by media intrusion, rather than validating any of the more specific claims circulating elsewhere. This distinction matters for a straightforward reason. It would be inaccurate to treat unconfirmed tabloid narratives as though they carried the same weight as the couple's own statements. Both Amanda and Clive have had numerous opportunities, across several years of television appearances and interviews, to confirm a more dramatic account if one existed. Neither has done so. What they have offered, consistently, is a version of events built around cumulative pressure, fame, farm work, family size, and the loss of privacy, rather than a single scandal. That consistency across several years and multiple separate interviews, given without any apparent coordination beyond their shared interest in protecting their children, is itself a reasonable basis for treating their account as the most reliable available version of what happened, even though it is admittedly less dramatic than some of the coverage surrounding it. Public reaction and the weight of a television marriage. The scale of public interest in the Owens' separation is worth addressing on its own, because it says something about how audiences relate to long-running factual television. Our Yorkshire farm had, by the time of the 2022 announcement, been broadcasting the family's daily life for several years, building a viewership that had watched the children grow from toddlers and young school children into teenagers, in some cases, over the course of the show's run. Amanda and Clive's marriage was not a subplot within that program. It was effectively the show's central relationship, the partnership around which every storyline about lambing, weather, finances, and family logistics revolved. That structure meant the separation announcement registered for many viewers as more than ordinary celebrity news. It represented the end of the specific version of Ravensseat that audiences had spent years watching, even though, as both Amanda and Clive have since made clear, the underlying family and farm continued largely intact. Some of the intensity of public reaction likely stemmed from that mismatch between what viewers understood the show to represent and what turned out to be a considerably more ordinary process of two people's relationship changing under sustained pressure. It is worth noting, in fairness to the format itself, that nothing about this outcome suggests the show was staged or dishonest. Documentary television captures real events during the periods a crew is present. It is simply not designed, and was never claimed by anyone involved to be designed, to reveal the totality of a marriage's private strain. Amanda's professional life continued largely uninterrupted through the separation and its aftermath. She maintained her published writing, continued to be a public voice on rural and farming issues, and remained a recognizable figure independent of the television show that had first brought her to national attention. She has, in interviews since 2022, occasionally referenced how the years surrounding the split affected her personally, generally framing that period as difficult but manageable, given the ongoing demands of the farm and the children, rather than offering an extended narrative about the relationship's end. Her public tone throughout has remained consistent with the practical, unsentimental style she was known for, even before the separation, describing hardship directly, without dramatizing it, and typically pivoting quickly back to the daily realities of the farm. She has also spoken about her personal status since the split in a small number of interviews, stating plainly that she has remained single and describing her current life as centered on raising her children and running the farm's day-to-day operations. She has not, in any verified interview, suggested plans for remarriage or a new relationship, nor has any reliable reporting confirmed one. Clive's public profile after the split became closely tied first to the Beyond the Yorkshire Farm spin-off with his son Reuben, and later to his continued presence on Our Farm Next Door alongside Amanda and the rest of the family. Verified reporting indicates he has remained based at Ravensseat and continued to be involved in the farm's physical operations, including livestock work, though his role has gradually adjusted, as some responsibilities, such as shearing, have shifted to his son Miles. His hip replacement surgery and recovery, addressed publicly through Amanda's interview updates rather than his own, represent one of the few health-related details either has shared about the other. Clive's public statements since 2022 have been comparatively less frequent than Amanda's, consistent with the more reserved public role he held even during the original run of Our Yorkshire Farm. When he has spoken, as in his 2023 interview, and again during the launch of Our Farm Next Door, his comments have focused on taking a measure of personal responsibility for the relationship's end, and on describing the practical logic of the family's current arrangement, rather than on offering a competing account of events. What the public record actually shows. Pulled together, the confirmed public record describes a gradual process rather than a single defining event. Reports of strain surfaced roughly a year before any formal separation was announced, at which point Amanda and Clive themselves publicly attributed the difficulty to the ordinary pressures of marriage and parenting, intensified by the demands of running the farm and by media attention. Their formal separation statement in June 2022 maintained that same framing, emphasizing a mutual and considered decision rather than a reaction to any named incident. Clive's later, more personal account added further insight into his own struggle to adapt to fame and his acknowledgement of his role in the relationship's breakdown. But even then, he did not describe any specific event that suddenly ended the marriage. What the record does not show is any confirmed single moment, decision, or discovery that caused the marriage to end immediately, as some headlines may suggest. Instead, the timeline points toward a slow accumulation of pressure across several years, increasing fame, relentless farm responsibilities, media attention, and the challenges of raising a large family partly in the public eye. Both Amanda and Clive have described the end of their relationship in those broader terms, rather than pointing to one dramatic turning point. And perhaps that is what makes their story more complicated than the headlines suggest. The end of their marriage was not simply about one argument, one revelation, or one day when everything suddenly changed. It was a gradual shift in a relationship that had spent years carrying the weight of family, farming, work, and public attention. Yet even after their marriage came to an end, one thing remained constant: their commitment to their children and to the farm they had built together. That commitment became the enduring thread connecting their lives, even as their relationship gradually changed and their paths began to move in different directions. So, rather than looking for one shocking moment that supposedly ended Amanda and Clive's marriage, the public record tells a quieter story, one of pressure building over time, two people recognizing that their relationship had changed, and a decision to move forward while still protecting what mattered most to them. If you found this deeper look at Amanda and Clive's story interesting, let us know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that go beyond the headlines and uncover what the public record actually tells us, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. There are often two versions of a story, the one that makes the headline and the one that takes a little longer to understand. We'll keep looking at the second one.